Dr. Emily Hayes had always been fascinated by the human mind. A brilliant psychiatrist, she had spent years studying the effects of trauma. But her career took a sharp turn when she accepted a position at Blackwood Psychiatric Hospital. The place had a reputation, one that made the bravest flee in terror. The rumours of patients disappearing, of whispered screams echoing through empty corridors, hardly deterred her. She wanted to know the truth. That Monday morning was cold, a grey sky looming over the hospital like a heavy shroud. Emily arrived early, the hospital's brutalist architecture looming above her like a fortress. Inside, she greeted the fellow staff with a nod, but received icy glances in return. She dismissed the unease, focusing on her first patient, a man named Caleb, who had been admitted for severe dissociative identity disorder. Caleb sat in the cushioned chair, hair unkempt and eyes darting frantically. "They're coming for me," he muttered, his voice a whisper. Emily took a seat across from him, her clipboard poised on her lap. "Caleb, let's talk about your thoughts," she encouraged, her voice steady. He locked eyes with her, and for a moment, the chaos in his expression stilled. "They're in my head. I can hear them. They want to break free. They don't like you, though," he said suddenly, shaking his head as if trying to rid himself of invisible hands. A chill ran up her spine, but she maintained her composure. "Who wants to break free? What do they want?" Caleb's hands clenched into fists. "You need to let me go. You're all trapped here, just like me. They'll come for you." Before she could reply, the room's overhead lights flickered violently, then went dark. "Caleb," she called, alarm rising in her chest. The only response was a low, guttural sound emanating from him, a moan that echoed off the walls. In a rush, she flipped out the light switch. Nothing happened. A bead of sweat trickled down her spine. She fumbled for her phone, using the screen's light to illuminate the darkness. Caleb was no longer sitting calmly. He was thrashing against the restraints. "Help me! They're coming!" he screamed. Emily bolted from her chair, moving to his side. She grabbed his shoulders, trying to ground him. "Caleb, it's okay. I'm here. Just breathe." His eyes rolled back, and he let out a shrill scream that seemed to warp the air around them. The sound sent prickles of fear through her. In that moment, the door slammed open, and a nurse rushed in, face pale. "What's happening?" the nurse shouted, looking between Caleb and Emily. "Turn the lights back on," Emily ordered. The nurse's gaze darted to the emergency exit. "They're already here," she said, voice quivering. Emily's heart pounded. She turned back to Caleb just in time to see his body convulsing violently. Suddenly, the room filled with shadows, indistinct figures swirling around them, whispering in a language Emily couldn't understand. The nurse backed away, eyes wide with terror. "Get out!" Emily yelled, dragging Caleb's thrashing body toward the door. They stumbled into the hallway, where the fluorescent lights flickered ominously above them, plunging sections of the corridor into darkness. Caleb's screams echoed, "They'll take you! They'll take you!" as they raced down the hall. The nurse turned to run, but was enveloped by shadows in an instant, her scream cut short. "Caleb, focus!" Emily shouted, pulling him forward. Just as they reached a corner, something slammed against the wall behind them, vibrating the floor. She felt a chill in the air as a wraith-like figure surged forth, ethereal and shrieking. They darted into the nearest room and slammed the door shut. It was a small, empty office, papers strewn across a desk. Emily took a moment to catch her breath, but Caleb's eyes were wide with primal fear. He clawed at the door, desperate to escape. "Stay back!" Emily shouted, pulling him away before he could reach the door. "Listen to me. You need to tell me what's happening." The whispers grew louder, crawling inside Emily's mind. She shook her head, trying to block them out. "Caleb, you have to help me understand. Who are they?" He twisted and writhed, panic flooding his features. "They're all the patients. They're dead." They want to live again. Emily felt the temperature drop as the door rattled. A voice slithered through the wood, raspy and familiar. "Let us in, Dr. Hayes. We're so lonely." She shoved Caleb away to force him to face her. "You need to talk to me. Tell me how to fight this." Caleb stopped struggling, a flicker of realization breaking through the madness. "You have to remember where they came from." "What do you mean?" Before he could respond, the door shuddered violently as something pounded against it, cracks forming in the old wood. Emily's heart raced, and without thinking, she grabbed a metal ruler from the desk. "Caleb, focus!" she shouted as the door buckled. He looked down, breathing heavily, but his hands were still shaking. In a moment, he seemed to gather resolve. She watched him closely, readying the ruler. "Caleb, tell me where to go." "Room 217, he screamed suddenly, his voice regaining clarity. "That's where it all started. The doctor—" Before Emily could respond, the door burst open, slamming against the wall, revealing a swirling mass of shadows, their forms shifting and writhing. A set of eyes locked on her, and instinct took over. She lunged for the door behind them, dragging Caleb with her. "Run!" They stumbled blindly down the corridor, breathless and terrified. As they sprinted, voices filled the air around them, each one sending shivers down her spine. Stay with us. You can't escape." A door loomed ahead. 217. It was slightly ajar, inviting and ominous at the same time. She pushed Caleb ahead of herself. "Inside." The room was dark, but intact. Old charts and medical equipment littered the floor, and a single flickering light bulb overhead cast eerie shadows. Emily slammed the door shut behind them and slammed the bolt, and Caleb sank to the floor, gasping. "What now?" he wheezed, leaning against the wall. She felt the weight of the room pressing on her, a heaviness that made it harder to breathe. "We need to find something. Anything that can help us." She rifled through drawers and cabinets. Papers, prescriptions, nothing useful. But then she spotted it, an old journal, yellowed and dust-covered, in the corner. She snatched it up and flipped through the pages. Scrawled handwriting reached out to her, detailing experiments. Reports of patients who had vanished over the years. "Read this." She pressed it into Caleb's hands. "What does it say?" Caleb took it, his fingers trembling as he read. His eyes widened. "This is it." The doctor was performing some kind of ritual, a way to bring them back using fear, despair. "Fear," Emily echoed, realization dawning on her. "That's what they feed on. They're using you." He shook his head violently. "We have to destroy it. Whatever he did, it has to end here." With determination, she ripped a page from the journal, frantically searching for a way to burn it. She turned to look for a lighter, only to see Caleb trembling next to the door. "Caleb?" she asked, fearing what she might see. He was staring at it, his eyes wide with a distant terror. "What's wrong?" "They found me," he whispered, voice trembling. Before she could react, the door rattled violently, shadows pouring through the cracks. She grabbed a nearby pen and thrust it into Caleb's hand. "You need to fight them. We need to fight together." He looked at the pen as if it were a weapon forged from fire. "What do I do?" "Write. Write them away. Command them." With shaking hands, he began scrawling on the wall, drawing sigils and symbols from the journal, fighting against the encroaching shadows. Emily joined him, her heart pounding as the temperature dropped further. "Do it! We can't let them win!" The shadows recoiled, howling in rage, and surged back, slamming against the door. Crack, another slam. The walls shuddered around them like a beast waking from slumber. Caleb's pen flew across the wall, and with every symbol drawn, a gust of wind pushed back against the shadows. "Faster," Emily urged, fear fueling her adrenaline. They finished the final symbol together, a complete circle, an enclosing barrier. The shadows shrieked, the sound tearing through the air. They surged forward, and Emily held her breath, knowing it was now or never. The symbols glowed, brilliant and fierce, pushing against the encroaching mass. Caleb lifted his head, a sense of purpose in his eyes. Now, focus your mind. Think of the living. She took a deep breath, ignoring the chills that crept along her skin. Only the living. We are alive. The shadows recoiled, shrieking as light erupted from the symbols, illuminating the room. Tendrils of darkness withdrew, and suddenly Emily felt the pressure ease. The whispers receded, the shadows shrank back like a retreating tide. But in an instant, a figure emerged from the corner, an apparition, twisted and grotesque, its features warped like a funhouse mirror. It lunged toward them, wailing as it reached for her. "Caleb," she shouted, feeling the apparition's icy breath against her skin. "Finish it," he yelled, leaning into the symbols. With a surge of desperation, Emily pointed at the apparition and shouted, "You don't belong here. You are nothing." The figure paused, as if her words resonated, and with a final scream, it burst apart, shards of darkness scattering into the air like ash. The room shook, and the ground beneath their feet tremored. The symbols blinked ominously, flickering like a dying ember. "Keep it up," Caleb shouted, panic slipping back into his voice as he pushed against the boundaries of the symbols. The last shadow flickered and disappeared, and in the silence that followed, Emily felt herself exhale. They stood in the room, trembling, illuminated under the faint glow of the symbols on the wall. But as they caught their breath, a new sound echoed from the darkness. Soft, sinister laughter that crawled under her skin. "What was that?" she whispered, the warmth of victory quickly replaced by dread. "They won't let go," Caleb said, looking at the door. "They'll always come for us." Suddenly, the door slammed open, the darkness swirling back in with a vengeance, and Emily found herself pulled into the chaos, a body tumbling through the shadows. She screamed. Caleb grabbed her arm. "We have to go," he cried. They stumbled forward, but the darkness surged, grasping at their ankles. "Help!" she yelled, fighting to keep her feet. "I can't hold them," Caleb shouted, panic filling his voice. "They're too strong." With a surge of adrenaline, she ripped free from the grasp and reached for the journal, still on the floor. She held it to Caleb. "Write again. We can push them back." He grabbed the pen, trembling, but before he could start, the laughter grew louder, filling the room with malevolence. "Do it!" Emily screamed, the shadows crawling up her legs. Caleb started writing, but the shadows wrapped tighter, clawing at him. "They're too strong, Emily. They'll take me." "No!" Panic surged through her. "You can't lose hope. Remember, we need to live." The shadowy figures writhed, intertwining, an army of despair. "You're ours!" they echoed in unison, voices layered over each other, drowning out her thoughts. Desperation surged through Emily as she tore a page from the journal and held it up, trembling. Shaking, she began to write a new command of her own, words spilling from her mind, no longer caring for precision. "Leave this place. You have no power." "Emily, no!" Caleb shouted, eyes wide with fear. But she pressed on, pouring her will into the words. It came alive on the page. The shadows twisted, momentarily releasing him. "You can't. You'll be trapped." The darkness roared, a cacophony of wrath and fury. But she held her ground. "I choose to live." With one final stroke, the symbols flared to life, bursting in a blinding light. Everything froze as the shadows screeched, vaporizing into a cloud of despair. Then silence. They stood there, panting in the ruins of the room, the whispers replaced by a heavy stillness. The threats, the darkness, they were gone. "Is it over?" Caleb asked, voice shaky. Emily looked around, unsure. "I think so." But just as hope flickered in her heart, the journal burst into flames in her hand, fire like indignations licking the pages. "No!" she screamed, throwing it to the ground. As it burned, the air thickened, and a low rumble filled the air. The walls shuddered, and she could feel it again, a pulse, rising from the floorboards. "What's happening?" Caleb cried, staring wide-eyed. "They're still here!" Emily gasped, heart racing. The darkness had receded only temporarily, and it was furious. The room trembled, the floor cracking, shadows seeping from the walls. "You've disturbed our slumber," a voice resounded, deep and resonant, echoing through the very fabric of the room. "No! Stay back!" she yelled, scrambling back to the door. "Leave while you can," Caleb shouted, darting toward the exit. "We need to get out of here." But the door slammed shut with a deafening thud, sealing them in. The laughter echoed once more, and shadows snaked through the cracks, swirling toward them. "Fight!" she shouted, trying to direct Caleb. They lunged toward each other, the panic palpable as the darkness spiraled around them. "They want us to despair. They thrive on it," Emily cried, fighting to pierce through the panic. "We have to show them we still have hope. We can't give in." Caleb's eyes flickered. "How?" "Think of something good, something that makes you live," she urged, the shadows closing in. He paused, drawing a breath. "My family. My son." "Picture them. Hold on to that thought," she yelled as the room began to cave in. "Together." With that, they reached for each other, minds intertwining in that moment, shoving away the darkness. "Leave us. We are alive," they shouted together. The shadows hissed, recoiling from the strength of their combined will. In that instant, the ceiling cracked, and a beam of light broke through, pouring over them. They shielded their eyes, and the light washed over the shadows, forcing back the encroaching darkness. It surged against them, but they stood strong, their thoughts connected in pure defiance. For an eternity, the battle raged, but at last the darkness faltered, shrieking in agony as it receded into the walls, the light swallowing it whole. Then, silence once more. They collapsed to the ground, panting, drenched in sweat. "Is it really over?" Caleb whispered, eyes wide with disbelief. Emily stared at the lettered walls, the remnants of the battle flickering out. I think we did it." They exchanged a glance, hearts racing as they slowly stood, the remnants of the shadows fading to nothing. But in that moment, the floor beneath them trembled violently, and the walls groaned as they pulled back toward the void, as if the hospital itself was shuddering with rage at their defiance. "No!" Emily screamed, lunging for the door. It was still closed, sealed with a dreadful weight. "Emily!" Caleb shouted over the chaotic sound. "We need to get out. Help me!" She pressed against the door, the pressure mounting. With a surge, he pulled back and kicked the door, but it wouldn't budge. "Together!" he shouted, and they both threw themselves against the door with every ounce of strength they had left. It shattered outward, a burst of wood splintering through the air, and they stumbled into the hallway, gasping for breath. The hospital was alive, shadows creeping along the walls, the whispers echoing in dark corners. They ran, darting past empty rooms, the air thick with desperation and fear. "We need to find the exit," she yelled, navigating the complex maze of hallways, the sound of their footsteps echoing back at them. "Where is it?" Caleb shouted, fear creeping into his voice. "Just keep going," she urged, pushing on, despite the fatigue coursing through her. As they turned a corner, they spotted a flickering light ahead, the emergency exit sign, glowing dimly. "That way," she called, not waiting for his response. They darted toward it, racing against the shadows clawing at their heels. With their last effort, they burst through the door and into the outside world, gasping in the cool, night air as the hospital loomed ominously behind them. "Is it really over?" Caleb panted, staring back, half expecting the shadows to emerge from the building. "I don't know," she breathed, "but we're alive." But as they stood there, a low growl echoed from the depths of the hospital. a whisper drifting through the air. "Not all of us are gone," it murmured, a promise and a threat. She felt it. The darkness would always remain, lurking in the shadows of the mind, waiting for the next patient.